Please help me welcome our next speaker for today, Mo Ash. Mo is the founder and learning architect at The Catalyst, and we are so excited to have him with us today. Mo, the session is all yours, sir.
Thank you, Casey. Hearts, 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 hearts. Okay, thank you so much, everyone. Boys and girls from the L&D industry, welcome to a session that is, well, it's going to be interesting. It's a session that I have been working on for years and years. I mean, not specifically what I'm going to be presenting to you, but the whole sum of everything that I've worked for in my career leads to this session. So to start off, just to get things kicking, um, I am not going to be sharing a slide or like a slide deck or like a presentation. My presentation is right here. So hopefully this is visible to you. If the screen is not big enough, make it big enough so you'll be able to see all of the shenanigans that I'll be mentioning right there on screen. So cool, cool, cool. I'm getting thumbs up. Now, I belong to a specific group in the L&D industry. Well, I identify as an instructional designer, and what I do for a living is design more than I do development. And then specifically what I do is game design or learning game design. And I've noticed something over the years that you get your instructional designers, you get your learning developers, you get your learning scientists, and then you get this group of people that are called game designers. And you wouldn't even know what do they do? How do they learn this? I mean, how do you get into learning game design? And over time, you hear them say certain words that sometimes get misplaced or they wouldn't know. Um, how do they operate it or how do they make use of it? Like mechanics and dynamics and all of that. And if you look and dig deep, loads of research, many different papers, and you're trying to make sense of things in order for you to start into learning game design. And I believe over time, learning game designers, they don't stick to a specific framework. They don't really stick to a specific understanding of how to do a game design. When you ask them, they tell you, yeah, we use this, we use that, and then they use jargon that you wouldn't be able to understand. And over time, you think that they belong to a specific cult, the cult of game designers. Only specific people can get into, and only specific people will be able to know how to do that. And it's a small group of people, like we're a small bunch. And that has been an issue that has been weighing on my mind for the past 6 years. That's why I'm saying it's been a lifetime working on what I'm working on. Um, what I've noticed that everyone has a good idea. Everyone has a good concept. Everyone can create a good learning game, but they don't know where to start. They could go and dig into the research. They can go and dig into what is needed to be done, but they don't know how to come up with a good idea. And that's been the crux, the thing, the core of all of the issues. How to come up with a good idea, a good game concept that you could start with, that you could build up on. And accordingly, I've been working on several ideas of my own to try to make learning game design a lot more accessible to everyone. I need something that will be simple enough, away from the terminology, away from the lingo, away from the gamification politics, that can let anyone come up with a good learning idea that can be transformed into a game. And that's how PENTA came to life, which is the discussion that we will be getting into. So to kick it off, let me talk to the chat and I want you all to answer me here. How many times you've been asked to make a game but had zero idea where to start? Can anyone like raise a hand, put it in the chat? Just let me know. Many? None? Okay. Many, many. Okay. 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 I see April in the audience here. Hey, April. So many. Okay. Now, good. Good to know. Big time. Good. So, how many times you've heard those terms and words? Certain terms keep floating around in the world of learning games. The word fun. Can I get any audience here that would say they heard that they want something to be fun? A lot. 100%. All the time. And I've always had an issue with the word fun because the fun that the client would need or the fun that people will be asking for is totally different than the fun that we're looking for. The fun that we are looking for is the fun of achievement, the fun that would get people going to do something, not the fun of, well, not the fun of play, not the fun of make a buzz, not the fun of entertain the people. I want something that can entertain them. Not the fun of, yeah, let's do a game that can motivate people. And we're not magicians. We cannot really motivate people. We could maybe create an environment that could motivate people, but can we have the power to like nudge them to be motivated? Well, no, not really. No, we don't have that. Also, that word, I hate that word. I've seen it a lot. I've heard it a lot. I read about it a lot. Edutainment. It's not education, and it definitely isn't entertainment. It's a mishmash between both of them where you don't get this, nor you get that. And for some reason, everyone talks about it, and I'm not convinced. Okay. And another thing is joy. I'm not a fairy godmother. Okay. I'm not gonna work on someone's joy. And obviously, all of this is not going to lead to completion rates that we're looking for. Thank you so much. It's not effective either. Also, it's not going to lead to the retention people are asking for. Neither is going to lead to loyalty in the company or adding up to people's means of commitment. And definitely, it's not going to drive ROI. And by all means, it's not going to increase performance. It's a big, fat no. And that's for a very simple reason. Simply because people, they're treating games as games. When instead, games are simply just systems. And let me explain. I have been crazy about the understanding of what games are. And games are rooted in history. They go way back since, well, since the ancient Egyptians and since the old Chinese dynasties. Games have always been about systems that have rigid constructs. They have an understanding, they have a clear input, a clear output that is quantifiable, that is measurable, that is result oriented, and in the middle, just in the middle between both of them, there's something called an artificial conflict, something where the game lies. Everything happens in that artificial conflict. It starts with that input and it leads to that output that we'll be looking for. And accordingly, as we go forward to understand what games are, let's differentiate between two specific words. Okay, there's a difference between both of them because they get thrown around a lot. Yeah, that's why they're called the Olympic Games. Thank you so much, Sarah. There's a difference between the word play, and I'm not against play, by the way. Play and game. Play is good, game is good, but what we're looking for is a lot more in the game section rather than the play section. So, what is play? Play is when my daughter, who's 5 years and a half, she would ask me, draw this with me. We're doing something that is spontaneous. We're doing something according to, well, her spontaneous rules because my daughter, and I've said that on stage before, and I'm going to say it again and I'm going to shout it out. My daughter is a sore loser, and I can't wait to see how we're going to be playing video games when she grows up. Because at 5, every time she fails in a game, she doesn't want to try again. She just throws the Joy-Con or the joystick or whatever you want to call it, because I'm an old timer, I say joystick. And she doesn't want to continue on. And this is a behavioral issue that I'm working on, but I'm digressing. So the thing is, she loves the play according to her own rules. And that's the thing about play. Play is pretty much free form, exploratory, often spontaneous, no fixed goals, nor external win states. If there are any rules, well, my girl would come up with the rules, if any, and they're invented, fluid, renegotiable. Let's do it this way. Let's do it the other way around. Let's race. And she wins, obviously. And it's autotelic. It's done for its own sake. It's done for the engagement that happens during the play. Yes, play is important, play is necessary. Exactly. And play is unregulated. It's not a system. If it's systemized, especially with youngsters, it will be a bit of an issue. But when we're talking about games, games, they're structured, they're goal directed, they're fixed, they have rules, they have constraints, they have boundaries, they have clear outcomes. That's why she's a sore loser. There's win, lose, score, completion, measurable feedback, there's progression. I understand why I have failed. Think Super Mario, think Sonic, think all of the good games that we've played since, I don't know, Nintendo NEC and Atari, all the way to the time that we're doing the things that we're doing now with Xbox and PlayStation and Steam and. So games are pretty much structured. And since we're in agreement now that games are structured, games are systems, now we need to understand how we can deconstruct that system without going into any jargon, without getting into any deep gamification lingo, and understand that it's about the input when we're talking about learning. The input, the output, and the artificial conflict. So the input basically is we have players, obviously. We have observable behavior that we know what the people are doing. We know also what they're good at. And even most importantly, and that's the thing that I always ask about, how are people failing? What are the constraints? Tell me where they are right now and what they're awful at, not what they're good at. And that is pure learning design rather than learning games, as a matter of fact. But I need to know what they're not good at before I get to know what they're good at. And then when I'm considering output, well, output is measurable results and metrics, KPIs, if you may, observable behavior. And in the midset of both of them, you get your artificial conflict. Now, in order for me to approach this and look into it in a very, well, proper light, I am definitely not going to be starting off with the input. I'm not doing games for the sake of games. Again, we're doing games for the sake of learning, people. So I need to know, okay, Mr. Client, Mrs. Client, stakeholder, someone that I'm dealing with, what do you want to have by the end of this? What's the result that you're looking for? So we always start with the output. Now, when it comes to the output, we need to differentiate between four distinct things. Those four distinct things, if we got them wrong, we are starting off on a long, long, wrong road. Those four differences are, well, there's a difference between an intention, an outcome, behavior, and action. So the intention, a client just comes to you, a stakeholder, someone that wants your game in a way or another, or wants you to design a game, and they'll be like, yeah, we want people to be better. What on earth is better? Better is not performance. What do you want people to do? What do you want people to act like, or like, how do you want them to be showcased in a way or another? So the intention, what we hope and wish to happen. And then we move on to the outcome. Outcome. Outcome, now we're talking. Now it's business. Now there's a North Star that I could reach out to, the measured result or the performance metric. Now we're talking numbers. Now we're talking substance. Okay, so that substance, that outcome, that performance metric, obviously you want me to make people behave in a certain way, something that is observable that I can look at, the pattern of repeatable decisions under real system pressure. That's why we're saying artificial conflict. I'm going to put them under specific fail states. I'm going to put them under specific constraints. I'm going to offer them certain resources, something they could work with. That's the behavior. But what are the minute, most specific core actions you want people to be able to do in a teachable format? Because if they did that, they'll be able to do the behavior, they will get you to the outcome, and God knows, maybe it could satisfy the intention that you're looking for. So we always start with the output. We need to identify and investigate, just go dig deep and just remove that intention, take that lid off, and then we go deep. Okay, what is the outcome? What are the behaviors? And then what are the actions? So with this, Now we can talk input. Okay, so who are your people? What is going on? What do you want me to do? And when I'm thinking about the input, I need to start thinking, do I want people and my learners to do something or to reflect on something? So if they want to do something, are you looking into action transfer or are you looking for a specific form of behavioral change? Or you want them to reflect on like a crisis or do a simulation where they exhibit change and something that they could interact with. So you want them to reflect on something, or is it both? You want to work on their perspective, work on their understanding of the system that they're in, on ethics, on moralities, on certain dilemmas. How do you want them to feel? How do you want them to do certain things? And accordingly, should the learning experience that you're building, that we're going to be injecting as an input, should it be driving thinking? You want people to strategize, to think about certain forms of logic? Do you want them to do some problem solving on a model, on a process, or on a template, on a technique? We could speak change management all day, but do you want them to apply VUCA, the seven steps by Cotter, or is it going to be the Kinevin framework or Stacy matrix, or how do you want to mishmash this again? Or do you want them to drive a feeling? You want them to put them under time pressure or tension or an emotion of sort, or you want them to empathize and see things from a different perspective, or even realize that the perspective that they're in, they're not doing it in a proper way or in a proper fashion. Okay. And that makes me get into something extremely important when we're talking about input. Input here, we have two main areas. Are we trying to drive cognitive engagement to make people think, to ponder, which is focused thinking on the teachable steps that we want to let people do? Do we want learners to invest mental effort to analyze, to compare, to plan, to solve inside the game system? Or are we trying to work? I was actually trying to scratch my head, but I noticed that I have a cap on here. Or are we trying to do emotional activation? You want them to have like some certain felt stakes here, or you want them to experience an emotion, a tension, an urgency. You want them to make it stick, make it matter. Or should we do both? We can do both. I mean, you can come by my shop and I could do both of them, but I need to understand what I need to do. If we want to do one of each or both, which yes, market that could be leaning on the affective domain as well the psychomotor domain and the cognitive domain altogether, to be completely honest. I should be thinking, okay, cognitive engagement. If I'm choosing cognitive engagement, then my goal is more, Mark, into sense making. I want diagnosis. I want prioritization. I want planning by them. I want them to build a schema for complex systems that they're approaching. And for that, the way I call it, I want the designer then to focus certain lens. If you're going for cognitive engagement, the lens that we have is called either a behavior transfer lens to practice certain decisions, or it's a collaborative dynamic lens where they need to reason and do the transferring as a team. You want this to be done individually, or you want this to be done in a team format or multiplayer format, if you may. And if we're looking into emotional activation, you need commitment. You want people to be driven emotionally or with empathy. You want them to act. You want to surface some real tension, some behavioral meaning. So if they're doing something, they're doing it with conviction. Here we have other two lenses. I don't have a lot of lenses here, only four. The two lenses that I mean here is emotional resonance lens. I want memory. I want meaning. I want it to stick. Or is it ethical judgment? You want values under pressure. And accordingly, my bad. And accordingly, what we do is that we could mishmash, and I don't know why again I'm using this word again, but we could combine, we could let both of them work together. We could do behavioral transfer with ethical judgment. We could do emotional resonance with behavioral transfer. We could do collaborative dynamics with ethical judgment. We could do collaborative dynamics with emotional resonance, behavioral transfer, and ethical judgment. What is the lens? The more you're more specified about how you're going to be approaching your input, it lets you understand how you want people to be triggered, how you want people to act, how you want people to decide. And that makes me very, very focused on how I'm going to be making the artificial conflict come to life. And since we're talking now artificial conflict, the crux of what I'm mentioning here is all about the artificial conflict. Good that you've done all of that. Good that you've done your behavioral mapping. You understood what is wishful thinking and what is observable behavior. You focus your lens. But now the beauty is in the cards. You have why cards, you have how cards, you have story cards, you have experience cards and nudge cards. Suit of cards that offer you ideas. When you mix them all together and put them in one form, in one system, you can get yourself out with a concept. So let's start with the why. Why am I talking about the why? Because why in systems, it's the purpose that creates the tension. Why people will be doing what you want them to do. This is the reason the game must exist, the performance gap you're closing, the specific decisions you want them to do to be better or to make better. We're talking knowledge retention, cognitive skill activation. We could be talking specific collaborative dynamics. All of those are whys, why I want them to act in a specific way. Framed well, why introduces basically the core constraint. We can't do X yet because we didn't get to that Y. It sets the stakes that generate the meaningful pressure that I want people to be put into. And also, it simply tells me what should the players be able to do differently and why does it matter now? So I take that why and I'm pretty much sure that I understand it. And then I need to look into how am I going to be driving that why? How I'm going to be making it happen inside of a system. And that's the how. The how, the system rules that move the tension forward. So I understand what the tension is and how to do it. Now, how can I move that tension forward? How is your mechanics that? Yeah, I'm gonna drop a lingo here. But the way I have always explained mechanics is that mechanics are the steam engines of any system. It keeps the people moving. It takes things forward. So those are the steam engine, the thing that gets people from one point to the other, not rules. They're the structure. They're the actions player will be taking, the resources they juggle, the trade-offs that they face, the feedback loop that keeps them understanding, yeah, I'm doing something good, or hey, let's take a couple of steps back. This is not rewarding. And it translates the purpose into a testable game loop where players will be able to do this each and every time. This is how we're priming them. This is how we're offering them the teachable steps. And this is how we build up the conflict to make it interactive rather than something that is pretty much abstract. We think basically design and then how people act, which is the dynamics, and how do they live that experience. This is the how basically. They can be simplified is that rules create behavior and behaviors create learning moments. So we as designers, learning designers specifically, we set the rules of the environment that we're on. The turns, how many turns? Is it going to be done by a certain time pressure? Is it going to be in branching scenarios, multi-path scenarios? Is it going to be using resource management or certain trade-offs or using a form of role play? What is happening here? How do you want people to act based on what? And every game, even if it's an abstract game, even if it's chess or Go, and I'm going for extreme abstraction here, at the surface, there's a form of immersion. There's something that drags me into it. I understand that there are two kings that are at war, or there's a fight or a battle that is happening. Although I'm not getting into the nitty gritty of how that story is, but there's still a story. There's still something that is grabbing me forward to interact with it, although it's pretty much abstract. So the story is the meaning layer that makes the tension matter. It could be extremely immersive, highly dependent on the story, or it could be just a crust, just a layer, just to get people, huh, okay, this is what you mean by that. Now let me engage. So story provides basically context. It gives rules. It gives consequences. So players basically care about the conflict. Okay, now it makes sense. Story could be even in the colors. And even in a minimalist simulation, a light narrative just tells them who they are, what they're up against, what success looks like. Are you employees? Are you here villains? Are we going to be doing a role reverse? Or are you going all Joseph Campbell, hero's journey from start to end, the all of your Spider-Man and Batman and Lion King, all of those voyage-based stories? Or is it a story where there's a scavenger hunt, there's an adventure, something more on the Odyssey as in the Greek Odyssey? Or is it something that is pretty much, well, you're going to be not the villain, but you're going to be going through a road of redemption. You were awful and now you're trying to get better. All of those stories simply shape how I'm going to be crafting my how in a meaningful way. It turns the challenge into coherent arcs. I noticed, I tried, I adapted, I won, I lost, I married, I divorced. That aids memory and transfer, okay? And story is not only in the narrative, stories are also in the UI, in the UX. In terms of board games, since you have here a lot of board games behind me, it's pawns, it's also meeples and dice, and also haptics, visuals, colors, color schemes, contrast. Sometimes you need something that is minimal with high impact on cognitive load management. I need to contain it. And sometimes I want to go full blown all story arcs, dragons, knights, aliens, and UFOs. So user experience here is extremely important. The experience part, the feel that makes the tension usable. And we're not only talking about the colors, we're talking about the colors being useful. They're talking about it being helpful to make the people just focus just enough to know what they should be doing, but not to focus just enough to get strayed away by confusion or too much amusement. So experience is the player's moment-to-moment perception, the interface clarity, the pacing, the cognitive load, the sensory cues. And also, if how is the skeleton, experience is the nervous system. It determines whether decisions feel crisp, fair, learnable, easy. And I'm all for accessibility, to be completely honest. I've spoken about this a lot, although I'm no expert, but I am a surviving ADHDer. So I know a lot about accessibility in different ways as a neurodivergent. And I do respect when you're respecting my mentality and vice versa. I would love to respect other people's mentality as well. Well, it takes one to know one, Mark. Thank you so much for that. And experience reduces noise. As a highly stimulated person, noise highlights affordance, lets the important choice be most obvious on screen, on table, in an escape game, in an e-learning game, and it goes on forward. Now, in the midst of all of this, I need to make sure that all of that I've put here is sustainable, is manageable. And I need to put people into areas where I know they will stay in till the end. Make that an asynchronous e-learning, make that a board game, make that a card game, make that whatever you want. I need to poke them enough. And this is where choice architecture comes to play. Here, I always refer back to Cass Sunstein, Richard Thaler, and Daniel Kahneman, who taught us a lot about behavioral science, about the indirect, automatic formats that people lean on because, well, it's easier, it's better. Me as a designer, I should be thinking about how I could use this to make the game accessible, easy, affordable, convenient, and it keeps them hooked. And this is where the nudge cards come to play. Nudge here, which is all about choice architecture, is about your motivational scaffolding. Am I giving them timely feedback, progress signals, certain visual bars that show them what they're doing, unlockables that take them from one point to the other, prompts that pull the players back into the loop after every success or failure. Something that tells me, yes, I want to continue on. Yes, I need to move on. Feedback that keeps the tension productive. Now I know what I'm doing. You just poked at me. You just hinted at me in a very minute format by design to keep me in, to keep me hooked. It ensures that the conflict stays in the desirable difficulty zone, not difficulty that wants me to slit my throat and slit my wrists and make me simply hate myself. Because sometimes, and maybe I'm digressing here, in games like Soul games, like Dark Souls and all of that, it's actually done by something called predictive processing. These games are done and nudged where people already are coming into the game knowing that they will fail. So every time they actually manage to get a win, they're hooked. On the other side, at the flip side, with predictive processing, we play a lot of toilet games. That's why I call them toilet games. No one calls them that, but I call them that. They're games what you play at the toilet, like all of your Candy Crush kind of games. It is predictably known that we're succeeding. The only time that we're hooked is when we're losing. So predictive processing goes both ways. And by understanding my learners, I know the kind of difficulty that I'm getting into and how I want to, well, focus the loops that would drag them in to make them as desirably difficult and engaging at the same time, with no frustration, with no autopilot. By turning challenges and consequences and by making process basically legible, in short, I'm trying to provide cause and effect for a reason, but making it quick and meaningful. So, in simple, this is the framework that, well, not everything in it, but that's like the basic format of it. When I'm playing here, and I'm trying to do a good idea for a design, I start by the why. I define why the conflict is worth solving, or if there is even a conflict, because if there isn't, and you're doing a game for the sake of fun or play or entertainment, then go leave the webinar, go somewhere else, because this is not for you. Then, how it encodes that conflict into constraints and specific choices that are circulating around the actions that I want people to do, the teachable actions that I want people to do. And I immerse people in a story, give it stakes, give it identity, not a huge identity. It could be minimal or it could be huge identity because this is what is needed for something that has emotional activation, as we've mentioned before. And then I'm going to immerse them into an experience, not only just a story, to make it engaging, to make it learnable, and keep nudging them to regulate the effort, to put the feedback format with reason, to make the people in a flow and let them keep iterating and iterating to continue on playing the game that they're doing. Now, I have around 7 minutes to show you something. So, does this actually work? Have you tried this? Well, for the past 11 years, no, sorry, 11 years. For the past 11 months, I have been iterating on this deck. And for the past 6 years, I've been studying to get myself to the point where I could be using a deck of cards of that sort. And recently, during DevLearn, I was approached right before DevLearn by a client that had a specific output. We need employees to be fully aware of the company's cybersecurity problem through a learning game after they're done with a 30 days campaign that they're going to conduct. The outcome should be that, well, the employees in the company should be able to have their phishing clicks go below 2%. 100% of the suspicious emails are reported within 15 minutes, and device patch compliance rises above 85%. Pretty hard outcome to try to take a knack at. And then the behavior. Employees right now consistently need to be able to verify requests out of band. You want this to happen right now? Yeah, well, we want that. We're aiming towards that. Report anything that is suspicious immediately via approved channel and use multi-factor approvals or MFAs and a password manager on all accounts. And the actions, why I want them to verify sender, links and attachments. I want them to confirm any payments. I want them to use password managers. I want them to lock screen. I want them to refuse things that are suspicious, unknown USBs, keep devices updated, something that they used to call is called a clean desk policy that they have. All of this is needed by the game. That's the output. Let me show you a little bit about the input. The input, well, apparently I want people to do preventive actions and report promptly. Well, easy. I want them to reflect on how dangerous it can be to not follow those. Okay, understandable. And how the experience would be like, well, they need to strategize. They need to do a lot of problem solving in situations that would demand them to think otherwise. Also, I need them to feel the pressure of what would happen if they do it wrong. They could lose their job. They could threaten the company's situation. I need to put a little bit of feeling. This experience should have both of them, not just do and reflect, thinking and feeling. So apparently, I need collaborative dynamics to do this in teams so I could make people lead on one another's ideation and let them work together. And also, I need high level of emotional resonance so they could, well, make sense of things. But I do have a couple of constraints that the client just threw at my face. Numero uno, there are 1,200 employees. That struck me. You want this to be done to 1,200 employees? Yeah. Well, how? We're going to be doing this in sessions for a campaign over 2 weeks. I'm like, okay, give me more. Tell me more. Well, they already had a campaign that failed due to the lack of meaning, and the activity that they used prior lacked agency and engagement and replayability. Because every time someone gets into that game, they tell other people how it's being solved, and basically they just get in and they win. And the problem is they didn't even know what was behind the winning or why would they win, but they were just looking for the prize, which was basically like a bag of chocolates. And not all employees did retain anything that was mentioned during the past campaign. They act always out of impulse with no consideration. They're just being hooligans there. And they do not see the logic in the preventive action steps that we tell them in the campaign. And this has to be done and contained in a game of no more than 60 minutes. This is when I started to freak out. So you want me to do this for 1,200 employees and do it in session. Each and every session is 1 hour. And within that hour, you want me to let them do all of that? During the meeting, I took my deck of cards out and I started to talk with them. First, okay, obviously you need knowledge retention boost plus real problem solving. That's the why. How? We're going to do this in a way for replayability and engagement and the agency to be in multi-path journeys, branching scenarios and decision trees where they start to think what to do and what and when to do it. And everything would offer them consequences and replayable fail states so they could keep on trying until they do it right. So they could understand the value of it. Plus, we're going to make this in a role-based learning format as a story and cause and effect. Every time they're doing something wrong, it shifts the story. Plus, the here the experience will be all about emotional framing. I'm going to be using visuals and haptics, and I'm going to be putting um, ideations where they will feel that they're in danger and give it tactical feedback and physical interaction in the form of a board game. And lastly, I'm going to make the challenge get more and more difficult as we go forward with small wins and immediate rewards just to keep them hooked to continue on all the way at the end. And as an added bonus, I'm not going to make them be the employees in this game. I'm going to make them be the hackers. Because if they became evil, they would know how to protect themselves from evil. And this is how it looked like as a prototype after I laid out those cards in front of my client. And this is how it ended up to be like and this is how people were interacting with the game, and this is how people were winning in the game, and this is how my team were delivering the game, and this is how we use the Penta deck to make something happen. And it took me simply 15 minutes with my client to come up with this collectively in a meeting. We just came up with an idea. The prototyping and everything that came afterwards, it sure did take its time, but at least I had a solid concept that I could talk to my client with. And it only took me five suit of cards, 5 steps in a framework, and I came up with something that I could work with and present. And that has always been the issue with any learning game designer, to come up with an idea, to come up with something solid that they could work with. And that's what I'm presenting to you. So I know that 40 minutes is not going to be enough. I know there's a lot to be mentioned, and I didn't get the chance to show you all of the cards. Well, if you were at DevLearn, you would have seen the deck of cards, you would have seen the stuff, you would have seen the guide, you would have seen the mapping, everything. But in order for me to help you out, I left you with 3 QR codes that I would love for you to get your phones out and start scanning here. The first one is a learning game design document that can help you with questions all the way from start to end to be able to know what to do on each and every step that I've mentioned, and even more in depth. The second thing, if you want to learn about the Penta deck and even reserve your deck, because we've launched the deck and everyone can get it now, you can scan this QR code to understand the concept and understand the deck. And if you want a sounding board that is based on the Penta system, I've trained a GPT specifically with Penta game design and Penta framework understanding to be able to guide anyone that is using this to become a sounding board, to be a helpful hand that can help them as they go and try to do some good game design. And with this, I end my spiel, and thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much, Mo. That was incredible. We appreciate you sharing your wisdom and expertise with our audience. That was so good and so cool, the facilitation style. I would like to share a very clunky old PowerPoint. I'm not as cool as Mo is, guys. I'm so very sorry.
Okay,
Um,
just putting the third QR code. And by the way, ELB, they have all of the links. So you can, you can, Casey, you're gonna send them the links, right?
I am. I'm going to send the links
They're
to
gonna send the
everything.
links.
It'll be ready in the follow-up email that'll come tomorrow.
Awesome. Awesome.
Okay, let me see.
Yeah, and at the end of the learning game design documents, and someone asks, you could find my LinkedIn. So you could find it there, but you could look it up on LinkedIn, Moash. And now over to Casey. She has an important announcement to make.
Yeah, we have an offer for a free trial of the training arcade. You should see that on your screen right now. So uh, please take advantage of that. Thank you all so much for your time today, and we will see you very soon.